You're listening to episode number 106 of the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. In this episode, we're going to talk about how to have peace of mind in the chaos all around you. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Jim Fortin, and you're about to start transforming your life from the inside out with this podcast. I'm widely considered the leader in subconscious transformation, and I've coached super achievers all around the world for over 25 years. Here, you're going to find no rah-rah motivation and no hype, because this podcast is a combination of brain science, transformational psychology, and ancient wisdom all rolled into one to take your life to levels you've never thought possible. If you're wanting a lot more in life, to feel better, to heal, to have peace of mind, to feel powerful and alive, and to bring more abundance and prosperity into your life, then this podcast is for you, because you're going to start learning how to master your mind and evolve your consciousness. And when you do that, anything you want then becomes possible for you. I'm glad you're here. Okay, so this week, peace of mind in the chaos all around you. Yeah, if you look at the world right now, there are so many people that are in so much fear. And they're in fear because of the uncertainty. Like I talked about in, a recent podcast, is they don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But what I also shared here is that, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow anyway. But people are just freaking out about, what's the world going to be like and all this kind of stuff. And what I want to share with you in this podcast, and you've heard me say this before, but maybe I can say it in a different way in this episode, where you can have peace of mind in the chaos, because there's so much chaos, peace of mind in the chaos around you. And I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook. I have groups there that I use with my Facebook groups that I use with my coaching programs. But overall, and maybe there's some way I haven't figured out yet, there probably is, that I can get into my groups without having to log on to Facebook, because there's so much nonsense on Facebook, so much fear, and people still, espousing all this fear about here's how you get corona, and here all this kind of stuff, and people should be at home, and people should be this, and people should do that, and all these kind of things. And quite honestly, it's just, like I say, it's a bunch of nonsense that people get into. Before I even go there, what I've recognized as a result, and I want to talk to you about that also in this podcast, is how you're going to use what's happening in the world right now, how you're going to use it to grow. Share my story and my example first at how I'm using all of this in a very positive way. What I noticed, and it's kind of apples and oranges, but it's not, that as you may or may not know, just recently started another transformational coaching program. I do 2 live programs a year, and we just started our spring program. And many people that come into this program come from the podcast. And I know this is the case because everything's frequency and vibration, but it was never more apparent until recently, is that I noticed that such a large percentage of people that registered, and they're already in the group and they're already communicating and creating community, they have a huge spiritual bent. And when I say spiritual, I don't mean organized religion. I mean spirituality. Because spirituality and religion are not the same thing. They can be kind of the same thing, kind of in the same family. But I'm not talking about, when I say spiritual, they're organized religious. They are very spiritual, meaning they have a heavy, I use the word bent again. They're heavily bent towards metaphysics, towards cosmology, towards being cosmic beings, which you've heard me say before probably. But they have a heavy leaning in that direction. And that being said, and let me point out also, is that they're very progressive thinkers. I tend to attract very progressive thinkers. And that being said, I recognized in this group, and it's going to pertain to you or not pertain to you, because you may continue to listen to the podcast or you might not. But it dawned on me that, these are the people who want what I can bring to them. These are the people who resonate energetically with me. So why not take the podcast and, for lack of better terms, make it more spiritual? And that being said, and it doesn't mean I'm going to abandon the, what I've done in the other 105 episodes. However, you've heard me, if you've been with me for any amount of time, you've heard me talk about working with a shaman for 25 years. My brother-in-law is a shaman, but he's also a babalao. He is a sorcerer. He is in the wall. When I say sorcerer, that would be in terms that would make sense to you, like Merlin. And so many people, well, I guess a lot of people think, well, that's not real or whatever, but it's not true at all. I mean, sorcerers are ones that go to the source. I mean, the unified fields, the quantum dimensions, and they work with these fields and these dimensions and non-ordinary realities. That being said, I'm not sure how I'm going to do it yet, so please bear with me. If you're new, then please bear with me. And if you've been around for a while, you know that I do my best to always over deliver. But what I'm looking at doing is going primarily into shamanism and spirituality in this podcast. And I'm looking to bring to you ancient principles and ancient ways of thinking that are still aligned with what I want to do with this podcast, which is, help you transform your life from the inside out. And of course, I'm not going to abandon brain science and neuroscience and everything else, but I want to start talking in this podcast because, see, this is the positive thing that came for me out of what's happening is that I'm going to just say it, and I'm going to stop censoring myself in this podcast to some degree because just being transparent, a large part of me wanted to reach as many people as I possibly could, obviously. I mean, I want to make an impact, but I think where I'm moving to is not reaching the most people that I possibly can, but reaching the people that are truly aligned with the content that I want to bring people in this podcast. And it might alienate some people. So let me give you an example. As I was just sitting here thinking about this, I'm like, okay, well, what kind of episodes do I want to do? And by the way, I'll get into the topic of this week in just a moment. I have no clue. But things that I can share with you and I can help you learn is how to connect even deeper with source, how to set up an altar, how to use an altar. And this just popped in my mind. I mean, I've had altars in my house for 25 years. What I did is in other episodes, I'd say, well, I'd call it my meditation room. That's not really what I call it. I call it my healing room, and it's full of altars. So these are things that I know will resonate with those people that really resonate with me. And if they don't resonate with other people, that's fine as well, because I'm sure they can find other podcasts that they can resonate with that can help them in different ways that I can't. So I also know that people, and I've known this for quite some time, and it was my covert attempt to reach these people, but people are awakening. And I really want to focus more on people that are more into their own spiritual, no dogma, their own spiritual awakening, meaning plain and simple, getting in touch with that higher and deeper part of themselves. That part of them, literally that soulful part of them. And what I promise I'm not going to do, because I think a lot of these podcasts are people just rehashing books and regurgitating and all this kind of stuff. How do I want to say this? Let me put it this way. I'm going to go the ancient traditions and the ancient ways and things that I've learned, not the new age path that a lot of people are on or they're doing podcasts about. Okay, I'll leave that alone for now. But anyway, I just wanted you to know that that's where I'm planning on going with this podcast. Okay, this episode, how to have peace of mind in all the chaos around you. That's really simple to do. I mean, it's very simple to do because I've had peace of mind this entire time. From day one, I've had peace of mind. And I've shared variations of this, if not the entire formula, in other episodes. But what I also know is that many times we don't really get something until it's put into a certain context or a certain way. And then we're like, boom, aha, okay, now I get it. And I also tell people, because I think there are so many people in my industry, and I'm just being transparent, and I'm going to be more candid, I think, or more direct in my episodes. There are so many people in the personal development industry that are full of crap. And I know that because I've been in the industry for a lot of years and I've worked the stages and events with the biggest names in the personal development industry. And well, I'm going to just share this. Many years ago, I was speaking at the same event, which was there was a circuit and a company that I worked with, and the biggest names in personal development were there. I mean, you know these names, and I'm not going to mention them because it wouldn't be the proper thing to do, and I think it'd be unprofessional. But the absolute biggest names in personal development were there, and I was there, and I was a speaker, and they were speakers, and blah blah. And I flew back from New York City, and I walked into a family gathering. It happened to be on a Saturday, and my brother-in-law was there. And he looked at me and he started grinning. And he said to me, he goes, you know what? By the way, I'm hopping around here. I'm sorry. He goes, all their density is rubbing off on you. And this was literally 15 years ago. And I said, what density? And he goes, the people that you work around and you're working with, they are spiritual. He meant spiritually. And I don't mean spiritually in terms of how people live in terms of spirituality and the dogma. He meant in terms of their lack of consciousness. And he goes, you could take all these people, and he mentioned names that one of the names might even be sitting in the White House. Let me just put it that way. But he mentioned the names, and he goes, you could take all these people, you can put them in in a blender, and you can blend it up, you can pour it into a mold and let it dry. And then he metaphorically took the mold, flipped it upside down, and he goes, thunk. And he goes, you know what? He goes, you have a dense cinder block of spirituality. So I have no idea how I got off on that track. So just bear with me here because this is my first episode that I'm feeling my way through when I decided to change my direction with the podcast. So anyway, it might come back to me where I went into that, but that's what I'm going to bring to you here. So now let me go back, and I'll probably remember later once I'm done with the podcast what I was going to tell you, which I'll tell you later. Anyway, if you look at the world, look at what's going on in the world around you right now, and all this fear that's going on with people is all what I call 3D ego. Meaning your 3D is what I call the bag of skin you walk around in. It's your name, John Smith. It is your lower self. It's not your higher self. It's the lowest aspect of you. It is the primal you. It is the carbon you. It is the physical electrons, neutrons, and protons, which are not you. Because as you know, I think you might know, you heard me say before, you're a cosmic being. Where I got that is people often say, well, we're not, human beings that have spiritual experiences. We are spiritual beings that have human experiences. Well, that's even dogmatic. I go beyond that and say that we are cosmic beings that have human experiences. And I'll expand upon that at a later date on another podcast. But this 3D ego, this you that you think is you, that's all just ego. It's all just personality. It's not your soul. It's not your higher self. And what I want to point out, and I think that you know at some level, at least analytically, is guess what? I know that you know, even if it's just conceptual to you, that you have a soul. I promise you, your soul is not afraid of the coronavirus. Your soul is not afraid of hoarding. Your higher self, which is obviously connected to your soul, or maybe it's not obvious, but it's connected to your soul, is not afraid of, am I going to get sick? Or what's going to happen to my job? Or my family, or my husband, or my wife? Your higher self and your soul knows something you've heard me say before. And I said this recently, and somebody pushed back and said, well, I don't agree with you. Well, that's fine. It doesn't matter. But your higher soul is not into all the fear that your 3D ego self could possibly get into. And the person that didn't agree with me, basically their disagreement is that they were in a lot of fear, and they were disagreeing that, well, anyway, I'm not going to go there, but I'm going to just leave it at that and keep on going if you don't mind, if that's okay. And anyway, forgive me, like I said, this is my first podcast, and I'm kind of feeling my way through and thinking through what I want to deliver with you. And I'm thinking to myself, I might want to create some notes for a future podcast, because the other stuff that I've delivered, episode, all the way to 105, I don't have any notes because I don't need them, because I do it every day. In the spirituality, I live every day working with a shaman, but I don't deliver it every day. So I may need to start creating some notes from here on out. But if you look at the world and you look at the masses, their hoarding and the worry and the conflicting Facebook posts. I mean, you can open your Facebook on any given day and see two very conflicting posts. Today I opened up Facebook and there's one post that somebody had posted about now the World Health Organization is saying, well, you should not be wearing masks. And then another post, literally two posts down, is, well, you should be wearing masks. And when I look at all this, I don't get caught in it. And I literally don't get caught and I don't get trapped in it and I don't have any fear about it. This might be a little alien to you, but it doesn't pertain to me. And I know you might be thinking, well, Jim, of course it pertains to you because you're on the planet. I mean, come on, dude. Of course it pertains. You know what? I'm on the planet and I can make it pertain to my 3D ego. But overall, what's happening on the planet does not pertain to the totality of my being, which means my soul and my higher self. And that being said, and that is the truth, and it's also the truth for you even if you don't recognize it, that being the truth, why would I get into fear and why would I make it pertain to me in the way that people are making it pertain to them? And they're literally, I mean, the levels of anxiety on the planet and people with OCD and anxiety literally are, I mean, if you could read a meter, it's off the charts right now for these people because they're making things, meaning their 3D experience, pertain to them. And that's literally such a small part of the infiniteness of their being. I even had somebody yesterday that was in their 3D ego. I mean, on my page, on my wall, I posted a Bloomberg post. And the Bloomberg post, I didn't even say anything. It wasn't even yesterday. It's probably a week ago, but I saw it yesterday or the day before. It was a Bloomberg news article about the facts of, which I'd even mentioned, I think, on the last podcast, the facts about Corona and why the death rate was so high in Italy compared to maybe Japan or South Korea. And I had somebody on that post, and I didn't make any commentary. I just shared the article on my wall, and it was a really good, as I understand, factual article. That was it. And somebody actually commented, and they said, you know what? This is not about fear. This is not about mind power. This is about a very real virus. And then the person put two words, quit it, meaning quit posting or quit sharing articles like that. And my first thought is what's so interesting is thank you for telling me how to run my Facebook page, which I don't use it a whole lot anyway. But that person, just by their tone, was in so much fear. And that's what this episode is really about, is when you're in fear, you're not in peace of mind. When you are in fear, you're in the lowest part of your being. Now, a thought I might have started a little earlier that I want to go back to is I really wish that you could see into my mind so that you could see that I'm telling you the truth. Because when I said so many people in my industry, that's where I was going with that, are so full of crap, is that I watch so many people, sorry, I lost my train of thought earlier. Here, we got it back. So many people in my industry are so full of crap, is that I watch them and they'll say one thing and they'll do another. And I know that because I coach and I've coached a lot of people that are they've got really, really big followings. I mean, they've got 100 million views on YouTube. And these are people that I coach. Many people, I've never said this in this podcast, many people have called me the coach to the coaches. I coach influencers. Well, that is when I do one-to-one coaching. And I've watched so many influencers, and they do not mean it in any kind of derogatory, I don't mean this in any kind of derogatory way. They want the best for what they're doing, and I hold no grudge about that. But I've worked events with very big names, and I've literally seen them tell audiences, you know what? They tell an audience one thing and they do something else, and they do the complete opposite of what they tell the audience. Now, back to my point is I really wish that you had some kind of meter so you could see into my brain, and that everything that's happening and everything that's going on, I'm not in fear about it. And I've not gotten into any fear about it. And that's what I'm sharing with you in this episode, is there's no need. Because what's happening, if I make it pertain to me, and I make it pertain to my 3D Jim Fortin, my past history of 55 years on this planet, which is not the totality of me, and I make it pertain to that, and I make it pertain to my money, and I make it pertain to my health. Well, sure, I could get into fear about it, but for me, I don't make it pertain to any of that, meaning it is what it is. And I'm not getting into the fear about that. So that's what I wanted to share, is that what I'm sharing with you, I'm being very transparent with the intention and with the hope that through this episode and other episodes that I'm going to do, is that I can help you also find the peace. Because this is what I know. It's a phrase you've heard before, is whatever is going to happen is going to happen. Whatever is going to be is going to be. I also want to point out here, in fairness, I am using common sense and I am using caution. I'm not out and about unless I have to, which, by the way, I like being at home anyway. I work from home. I might go to the drugstore if I need. I go to the grocery store as needed. But for the most part, I'm self-quarantining. I've got everything I need at home. I'm not out and about in the masses where people are, whatever. But use your common sense. But again, that's not the point. Is if I had to go out tomorrow, and I even had to go out in no crowd, and the operative word is had to. If I had to do it, then I would do it without fear because I had to do it. Okay, so as I said, because my objective in this podcast is to bring you the highest quality content that I can and the highest quality experience that I can as well. And what I mean by that is I want to be as succinct as possible, and I know that I've kind of been meandering through this episode. So anyway, here's what I want to ask you this week. How are you responding? And how are you, and you've probably heard me say this before, how are you being? Because I talk about everything is about being. How are you being? And you've heard me talk a lot, I think, in many episodes about everything comes down to not what you do, but the ways of being. So I want to ask you right now, just plain and simple, and please ponder this, is how are you being in the midst of all the chaos around you? And sit with that answer and get honest with yourself and look how you're being, because that will tell you the context. That will tell you the belief that you have. That will tell you the attachments that you have to your own life. That will tell you the attachments that you even have about your beliefs about what the world is and what it isn't, and if you get sick and if you're not sick, and what's going to happen to your business and what's going to happen to your money. Every bit of that is attachment. So right now, before I ask you the next question, is how are you responding in the ways that you're being? Look at that first. Next, which I shared with you when I started this podcast, what are you learning? What are you learning? And there's so many opportunities right there with that particular question, is what are you learning about yourself? What are you learning about the world, your interpretations of the world, your expectations of the world? You can even walk into a store like Whole Foods. And I walked into Whole Foods here. I'm in Sedona right now, my house here, and there's only 10,000 people that live here year round. 4 million visitors a year, but only 10,000 a year that live here. And right now it is quiet in town because there's no visitors, because people aren't traveling. And, when I ask about what you're learning, I was in Whole Foods and I'm just watching people. And I'm watching how they interact, and I'm watching people wearing the mask and what people are touching and what they're not touching. And my question to myself a couple of days ago is, which I'm going to go somewhere later in this podcast with it, is are they being their same self, no change whatsoever as all of this is happening? Are they going on autopilot from all their years of history of being a human being on the planet? Or are they actually learning something from this and out of it? So I'm asking you, what are you learning? And there's so many places that I could take this. I marvel at, and I don't know what's real and not real this day and age in media, but I just looked a little bit about, and I've seen some posts about how the air is cleaner now in different parts of China because they're not driving. New York City, there's no cabs out in the streets. I saw an article a while back about how dolphins are showing up now in the canals in Venice. So there is so many things we can learn about the world and about ourselves, and even business. I lead a business group also, and I told people today, I was saying, you know what? You guys have a massive opportunity right now. And I'm going to segue from the spirituality, but you know what? This will help you. Is I was telling the group today that you have a massive opportunity right now because necessity is the mother of invention, or so, so people say. And I'm like, so many people are trapped at home now, and so many people are without incomes. How can you use necessity? How can you use this to create something new that's never been created before? Create something different, create something in a different way. And so when I talk about what are you learning about the experience you find yourself in now? Or are you like the people that I mentioned at Whole Foods? They're the same frayed human beings that are modifying their behavior a little bit and just going through their days. So, what are you learning? In that same vein, are you prognosticating, which people are doing tremendously on Facebook about what the future is going to be? And if you notice people prognosticating about what the future is going to be, do you notice that people are prognosticating based upon what they're learning, what other people think the future is going to be as well? Are you prognosticating the doom and the gloom 3 months from now and 6 months and a year from now? Or are you taking advantage of the opportunity in front of you with perhaps some new clarity after listening to this episode? One of my students said to me, because she teaches, she's an MD and she teaches advanced immunity and how to be immune and different things you can do. And someone accused her, and she mentioned this to me, some stranger accused her of taking advantage of people. And I said, no, you're not taking advantage of people. You're taking advantage of the opportunity to assist more people. Because as I just alluded to, you have a lot of opportunity right now. Anytime an economy is in flux, there is massive amounts of opportunity. And so I'm asking you, what can you do to capitalize and take advantage of what's happening in the economy right now? What have you learned and how can you expand your creativity? All right, I want to go a different direction here. And I don't, I generally try to keep the episodes under 30 minutes. Hopefully this episode is hitting home with many of you in some way. But when I talk about what are you learning, are you seeing with new eyes? Now, here's something I want to share with you also is working with a shaman for many years, there's a concept called a shamanic death. A shamanic death is where parts of the personality die. Parts of basically the old you die in a shamanic death. And shamanic deaths can last a matter of a couple of weeks to months sometimes. And I'm going to just share with you, I've had many shamanic deaths. And what I want to share is they're not fun by any stretch of the imagination. They're not fun because it's like a snake shedding its skin. It's some part of the old you, the old ego falls away and a new you is reborn. And this year in 2020, starting in January, literally from the last week of December until maybe 3 weeks ago, till I ended up in the hospital, which is part of the shamanic death, it's been an excruciating. That's why we did the encore episodes for, I think, 6 weeks. It's been an excruciating time in my life for me, and literally the most difficult time of my life, and literally the shamanic death from hell. It's been extraordinary hell, especially up through the 3rd week of February. But it's like the old phrase, out of the ashes rises the phoenix. And for me, there's been extraordinary growth. Even with working with a shaman for so many years, there's been so many epiphanies and transformations and ahas and growth through this last shamanic death that I was even talking to my brother-in-law, Don Javier, the shaman, and he said to me, he goes, you had to go through every bit of this so that you can help more people, which is hence why I'm babbling in this episode, but I'm sharing with you why I want to shift the focus of the podcast to more in-depth and deeper work into spirituality and into shamanism. But in shamanism also, there's a ritual, and I've been through stuff like this before, where an apprentice, and what I just went through and I've been through is the most excruciating thing I've ever been through, but I've been through experiences that have challenged me significantly. And in shamanism, there's a practice where an apprentice is taken out, and they're taken out and left in the middle of nowhere. In this day and age, it's harder. I mean, in thousands of years ago, this was very easy when there's nobody there and there's no civilization. But now it's harder because of civilization. But they're left with no food and no water, and they're left to their own survival. Literally, they're left with nothing. And the point of this is to get the apprentice to grow beyond, all the things, all the 3D thinking. And that's why I share this shamanic story with you is how are you growing? With what's going on right now in the world. Another question that I have for you is this, is what can you let die? What can you let die in your old reality, in your old way of being? So back to the story, the example I gave you of Whole Foods. These people that are in there doing, as I'm watching, okay, and it's not I'm not judging because I don't know them to judge. I'm just observing behavior, and I'm generally very good at that because that's what I use in my coaching. It's part of my skill set. But as I'm watching so many of these people and things that they do, is they're just taking the old you in their current situation, and once the current situation is over, they'll go right back to the old them. And for you listening, and thank you for listening to the podcast, is what can you let die in your old reality, like the phoenix coming up out of the ashes, so that when this is done, you are a new and improved version of you, as opposed to the old version that just went through something that you could have learned from, you could have evolved, you could have transformed from, and then just going right back into your old ways. So the question is this also, is what of your old ways can you use this experience to transcend the old ways? I'm not sure I said that correctly, but basically what transcendence can you take out of this so that you can build upon and grow going forward? Let me lead you here a little bit. You might be scratching your head saying, Jim, I don't know. I don't know where to start. What can I transcend? I was listening to and I've seen this, not just listening, I have seen, because I've been by his side for 25 years, my brother-in-law, and it's easy for people to talk, but I mean, he is the real deal shaman, like I've said before, as you would find in the Amazon. And he said to me, it was actually here in my house in Sedona back a few months ago, and this is so empowering when we get this. And I'm also going to be 100% transparent. Have I mastered it at the level that I want? No. But am I moving there? Yes. And he said, I live my life with no fear. And I have evidenced that. I've seen that, and I've seen evidence of it for 25 years being by his side. So you might be thinking, well, okay, Jim, what can I transcend? The most powerful thing that you can transcend, and you can fake it and you can try to be calm and all that kind of stuff. But the most powerful thing you can transcend in this time is your fear. Because in your lifetime, in all of our lifetimes, for the most part, and then maybe not, the world is on it's very tumultuous, it's very chaotic, and that throws people into a lot of fear. So what I want to share also, let me finish this thought, is we talked, and the name of this episode is peace of mind, right? How to have peace, how to have peace of mind with all the chaos around you. But here's a big takeaway for you. If you have no fear, it's very easy to have peace of mind. And I want to say that, and I've done it literally to keep things simple in the podcast, I want to say that in the podcast, I have said before, because I'm going to contradict myself, and I want people that have been paying close attention to understand why. I've said that fear is natural for human beings because it's brain-based. It's from the reptilian part of the brain. But when you start working outside of the brain, now that's not going to make any sense to people right now, but when you can clearly separate, which hopefully we'll get there at some point with another episode, when you can clearly separate mind and brain, and you're working from mind, now you're working from soul level and higher self level, and not being driven by the 3D level, which also is neurological and biological and chemical and physiological and has the brain, because the brain will get into fear. But let me go back to the question here. What has to happen for you to have peace of mind through this entire situation and for you to cultivate peace of mind as well? So if we look at, and I've asked you a couple of times, what can you learn? What can you learn with everything that's going on right now in the world? If you're not there yet, and I'm going to just tell you candidly, and I mean this humbly and respectfully, 98% of you have not even begun to master living with peace of mind. And this is an amazing opportunity to do it right now. It reminds me of an analogy that I want to share with you. I know a guy who used to teach meditation, and he used to actually hold big events, and he would hold them at the airport. And this was many years ago, and I'm laughing because you're probably thinking, well, the airport, I mean, come on, dude. I mean, that's loud, that's noisy. And I said, how come you're holding your events at the airport? And he said, because if people can learn to hold that quietness of mind at an airport, which is one of the noisiest places in the world, they can hold that peace of mind anywhere. And so what I want to share with you, the metaphor and the analogy is here, or the analogy is that if you can learn to breathe and relax and let go of the 3D fear and hold peace of mind now and what's going on in the world, which in my interpretation, it doesn't even bother me like 1%, but that's my interpretation and my years of experience. When you can learn to hold peace of mind now, you can learn to hold it at any time and any place and any circumstance in your life. The question is this, and I've asked it a couple of times, and I'm going to ask it in a particular way. I'm asking you the question in this way for a reason. What has to happen? What has to happen for you to have peace of mind through this entire situation? Another way to ask this question is ponder this. Who do you have to become? And you hear me use the word be again. Who do you have to become to have peace of mind throughout this entire situation that's going on in the world right now? So the transformational takeaway, which I told you, by the way, and I want to hint here very quickly before I wrap up, is without fear, peace of mind happens automatically. And you might have heard me say before also that as a being on this planet, when you have peace of mind, you have well-being. And well-being is your highest state of function as a 3D being on this planet. Okay, so transformational takeaway is without fear, you can have peace of mind. Okay, episode number 107, not 7, 107. The next episode, candidly, as I'm looking at, a new format, I have no clue what the next episode's going to be about. And I'll leave it at that. I have no clue what the next episode's going to be about. So tune in and we'll find out once you tune in. Okay, thanks for listening. Thank you for letting me fumble around a bit and find my bearings in this particular episode. And I promise you as I go, I'll get a lot better at delivery when I'm talking about content like this. Okay, stay in peace, stay well, stay healthy, stay happy, and I will catch you on another episode. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this entire podcast. If you're the kind of person who likes to help others, then share this with your friends and family. If you found value, they will too. So please share via your social media channels. Also, if you have questions, I'm here to assist. You can email me questions to support@jimfortin.com, and I may even use your question for a future podcast episode. Also, if you want transformational content like this daily, connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram name is I am Jim Fortin. Finally, I do have a personal request. I believe that we're all here to help others and to grow and evolve ourselves. Together, you and I let's help more people. If you would please leave a review on iTunes, and a good one, by the way. I'd be grateful, and through your assistance together, we can transform more lives. Thanks for listening.